Hey everyone, Mr. Wineland here, going over Chapter 12, Section 1, the growth of the territories. Um, going to kind of briefly go over this. I'm not going to take too long with it, but we're talking about the growth of Oklahoma Territory and eventually Indian Territory as well. We had talked about in the previous chapter, and even the previous chapters, that the Indian Territory was laid out for Native Americans, but eventually, over time, white settlers are going to slowly close in and take that part of certain parts of Indian Territory, which eventually become Oklahoma, um, for themselves, certain unassigned lands. And then we start to see is that more as more white settlers creep in, that's going to encourage more and more white settlers to creep in, which then is going to absorb much of the land. And eventually we're going to see the two territories grow even bigger and then eventually come together as one state. And a lot of this has to do with railroad power, even from the beginning. Railroads helped speed the movement of settlers into Oklahoma and Indian Territory and Oklahoma Territory. As you can see your answer number one there. Even with 1829, when George Stephenson won a contest in England building the fastest steam-powered locomotive, American engineers quickly remastered this, creating new patents and new forms of the train to make this technology work in the United States. And what we start to see by the late 1800s, this industry has grown and it's bringing everybody everywhere around the United States. But that helps kind of bring more individuals into Oklahoma, and the railroad plays a big part. I mean, coal, asphalt, and timber were all being exported all because of the railroad. The railroad was importing and exporting items out of these areas. And railroads in the town were good for the economy because you would see that if you had the railroad, it's going to cause growth because people relied on the railroad to for transportation, but also transporting goods down there. This could mean that your town could be a boom like El Reno or Reno City. So if you did not have the railroad, it was going to really hurt your chances of growing to being a huge community. So we start to see a lot of governments are coming in, they're planning where the railroad should go, what town should get it. And this is going to frustrate certain citizens because some were hoping for the railroad, others would get it over them. And that really made it difficult because here's the thing. I mean, you got to understand this is out in the wilderness. I mean, if you can't access the railroad or if it's longer to access the railroad, it's going to put you at a big disadvantage to others that have it. But this grows a lot of towns. We see Oklahoma City is growing because of four railroads by 1897. You see freight yards in Bricktown. Used to be this place for dropping off products and shipping off products down in Bricktown. Now it's a big entertainment center, but cattle, cotton, horses, wheat, corn were coming out of there, exported out of Bricktown. Impound trains were filled with hardware, machines, farm equipment. You see Shawnee and other big rail centers served as a repair center for Rock Island Railroad. Grand Depot built here for Santa Fe Railroad. So things are growing, things are becoming huge. Tulsa really needed the railroad. They wanted the Katy Railroad. They're hearing the Katy is coming through, and they really want it. They're finding out that it may be going through Sapulpa, which we guys know that's around Curry County or in Creek County. So Tulsa basically goes to the Katy Railroad developers and says, "Hey, we'll give you a $12,000 bonus and a right-of-way land, meaning like we'll give you some land and let you just build the railroad here." And so Katy Railroad chooses Tulsa to do so. Thanks to that, we see an interurban short train routes within town are built in places like Tulsa, Oklahoma City, mostly Oklahoma City. These things called trolleys or that would go around the mostly certain parts of Oklahoma City and would transport people to certain places. You see that in downtown Oklahoma City. Actually, they have a new interurban now where they have these metal tracks that are built into the road, so you can actually take it all the way around downtown. It helps. I mean, I think if you're trying to, get from one place to another without having to, drive your car through downtown, it helps through the metropolitan area. So the success of the Metropolitan Railway Company brought other interurbans into Guthrie, Norman, El Reno, McAllister, Muskogee, and other communities, Oklahoma City being one of them. assuming make sure you write Oklahoma City down as well. Automobiles eventually led to the demise of interurbans because it's in the the passenger rail service. I mean, because it gave people a little bit more freedom. You are limited based on the interurban. The interurban can only take you to some places. It's like subways in Boston, New York. I mean, yes, the subway is helpful. It can help you get from one half of town to the other half of town. But once you get off of that stop, I mean, you still have to do a little bit of walking in ways. And some people, didn't want to wait for the trains, and some people, just feel like they have more freedom with the automobile. It does help. Agriculture is shifting and changing. Farmers' success depend on the rainfall. The sorghum is planted often by first settlers. Good for livestock feed, sorghum molasses, sweetener. Cotton, oats, maize, wheat, broom corn were grown in drier climates. We see cotton was growing well in much of these areas to keep down weeds. To pull bolls, bag a hull, and the cotton gin removes seeds inside the cotton boll. When fully heavy sacks were weighed and emptied into a wagon, we see families would take their full wagon to the nearest gin, where it shipped, turned into a bale, and then they would go off and sell those bales. So we see agriculture. Wagons would obviously be filled up with a lot of these bales and go into town. And once they sold, these farmers would sell all their bales of cotton, and they would take their money with their families, and they would probably go shopping and buy all that they need, and then sleep in their wagons, and then head off the next day to head home. So cotton was sold. Families would buy these supplies and then head back. But cotton was successful. It's a very successful crop in Oklahoma. It still is in some ways successful in certain parts of this area. But the new danger came with the cotton crop was the boll weevil, and your definition's right there, an insect that damaged many farmers' cotton crops until the method was found to kill it. We see Russian immigrants also come in this area and have some success. They brought red winter wheat seeds that grew in certain territories. Also, the invention of the machinery for wheat farming improved production. We see new mechanical machinery is going to make it a lot faster to gather the harvest. We see horses, mules for farming, for transportation. Every farm had milk cows as well as chickens, hogs. Education's big. Schools were important, needed for the community life. We see subscription schools were around. Parents paid $1 to $2 a month fee per student. But we see by 1890, the Organic Act actually establishes schools in Oklahoma Territory, which gradually replaced the subscription schools. We see J.H. Lawhead was the first territorial superintendent. By 1897, mixed race schools declared unlawful. So segregation was high and still at this time. Black students rarely had the chance to go to school after 8th grade. As far as mining, we had salt, coal, lead, and zinc were important into the Oklahoma Territory. Tri-state or Joplin region was rich in lead around this time. By 1913, large deposits of pitcher. You also had 1926 Ottawa County, largest supplier of lead and zinc. We see Ruby Suco Mill in Blaine County was the first gypsum mill in Oklahoma Territory. Had some success there in that time in that area. Also, we see in 1904, St. Louis World's Fair was a chance to demonstrate gypsum. In the 1890s, we find evidence of possible gold. By 1895, miners are swarming into Kiowa, Comanche, and Apache Reservation, taking up that land. And then when the area opened to settlement in 1901, people were waiting to make their fortune of gold. But ultimately, gold fever died once geologists went in there and determined the ore was not good enough. But this ultimately gets more and more people into Oklahoma Territory, and we start to get noticed by the United States of, hey, we need to start turning this area into a state. And so we're going to talk about how these two territories are going to come together to form Oklahoma. All right, that's going to do it.